Am I audible at the back? Perfect. So first of all, thanks Bhaskar for calling me over, and it's a great opportunity to be at Cypher. I still recall the first Cypher I attended and was part of this in 2015, and I must admit, in the last 4 years, Cypher has definitely attained a cult status because I think there is a want in the industry today when we talk about analytics AI, that how this whole aspect of thought leadership, applications, and what we learn and practice on day-to-day basis can be imparted, disseminated, and showcased in a manner. I think Cypher is doing a wonderful job in that regard. So thanks, Bhaskar, on this. I think first, disclaimer, by no means, during the course of the presentation, I will subscribe to any political views. This is a presentation which is meant to give a sneak and a very comprehensive viewpoint about what India should do to take a premier position in artificial intelligence. And not to take out the effort, there is a significant effort and bandwidth which is going in terms of making India the premier, I would say, nation in artificial intelligence. Now, as I speak today, close to about 28 countries are on the verge of curating, drafting, and implementing their artificial intelligence policy for their nations. There has never been in the history of technology such an unprecedented wave of one technology which has become the most hyped, the most topical business lexicon for the CXOs. And that's where it's very imperative for the organizations and nations to leverage, capitalize on this opportunity, which is once in a lifetime. And in the course of the next, I would say 30 odd minutes, what I would like to kind of do is to kind of take a whole viewpoint about, one, what's this whole segment of artificial intelligence is all about? Why there is so much of hoopla and hype around this? Second, on the advancements and sophistication in artificial intelligence. Third, sticking back to India, what we should be doing as part of the policy changes, the whole ecosystem in terms of curating that. And the last, what are the interventions on the artificial intelligence, what India is doing, or should be doing rather. So this is where I said that eventually, if we take an aspect of artificial intelligence, I go back to the time about 18, 20 years back, what started in form of an MIS, a management information system, a simple report capturing all the essential parameters of a function of an organization, got morphed at some stage into ERP. The whole aspect of proprietary data, of functional departments started getting generated, and something called a daily P&L got formed. But then came something with the advent of data aggregation and a lot of digital kind of tools, something what we say a whole slew of business intelligence and data warehousing tool, Cognos, Teradata, MicroStrategy. Each one of these tools was trying to showcase how data can be aggregated, how data can be massaged, harvested. But the insights, intelligence, recommendation, things were missing. Then came the whole genre of analytics, what we say, right from descriptive to prescriptive. The whole aspect of preempting the actions in terms of what an organization should take to reach or anticipate to the next level. And then that's where the whole analytics started getting what we say pervasive, embedded, and smart in the systems. And if that was not enough, the whole aspect of sophistication on image, voice, text, and video came into picture with artificial intelligence. Now, it's not a misnomer today that while it's a big hype, but there is an investment which takes to kind of get the results in artificial intelligence. A simple example, it's also challenging and mimicking the human brain. And when we talk about this whole comparison, one single image to distinguish between a cat and a dog. A human takes about 2 images, right? 2 images, humans are good to distinguish. Machine learning algorithm has to be fed at least of 500,000 images to distinguish between a cat and a dog. So there is a leap which machines have to take, and they're already taking. We have seen the advancements. But what's important out here is how this all translates in terms of nation building. Now let's look at the whole aspect of artificial intelligence in terms of the numbers today. One, we're talking about close to about anywhere between $26 billion to $39 billion spent in artificial intelligence in 2016. One of the big revolution you would see today is a new segment of artificial intelligence on your left getting created, where we are talking about $100 billion market, addressable market, coming together by 2025. By the way, we always count analytics as a separate segment, which is close to about $150 billion, growing at a CAGR of about 17%. But artificial intelligence per se has been termed as a separate segment, and we are talking about a $100 billion market in 2025. Now, if we also aggregate robotics, which is what we are talking about, RPA, automation, where the underpinning is all analytics, then the total market size becomes almost $150 billion. Now, the reason I'm touching these numbers, one, by no means these numbers can be ignored. Second, never ever has been one segment of technology been growing so fast where it can be ignored. And that's where we say that once the technology starts seeping into organizations and into our day-to-day lives, the impact per se becomes very, very paramount. And one of the interesting aspects of the adoption scenarios of AI, and this is more for the skeptics of AI, that if you look on the right side, close to about 200 suites, C-suites level folks are trying to say, and we are talking about a 75% adoption kind of, let's say, result from the survey, that they would see results of artificial intelligence as early as 2019. Now, this is where the investments which is getting sunk, which is getting into this whole aspect of nations talking about artificial intelligence, is something which is not a fake thing. And if that's not enough, it's got a direct correlation in terms of the business impact it throws to the organization. A significant impact, right from augmenting the sales to looking at efficiency increase to the whole bottom line reduction. Artificial intelligence has proven the business metrics are the key, and it has what it takes to deliver that. Now, if we look at one more aspect of this whole numbers and all, I think there is always that aspect between when we say that the world is divided today between Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk, I mean the naysayers and the yesayers. But if we look at today the competition in terms of how they are not able to embrace, this is one of the numbers you can't ignore, that by Forrester, a significant $1.4 trillion worth of business may be stolen from the competition if someone is not implementing artificial intelligence, which means the laggards will face huge challenge when it comes to reaping the benefits of artificial intelligence. And this is where what we say that what it means is not just about the numbers. Now you look at a startup community. $14 billion worth of investment happened in AI startups with 600 rounds of investing. We all know also China is building an AI park with 30 billion investment, 5,000 startups in just one location. Now, this is where we say that when the rubber hits the road in terms of what it means for the nations, some of these numbers are very crucial to understand the whole aspect of the significance of artificial intelligence when it comes to adoption. But I will not spend much time on this. I think there's been enough sessions on this. And This is something what I always say, it's a holy grail that there has never been one standard definition, whether it's analytics and AI, and maybe that's the beauty of this industry, that all of us thrive, putting our own set of what we say preaching aspect, and once the monetization starts happening, we believe, okay, this is something what we have kind of showcased is working well. But essentially, in a very simple lucid term, we are talking about the whole aspect of mimicking the human brain. The whole point of sense, comprehend, act is something which is embedded in the artificial intelligence. Image, voice, text, and video talking to each other in terms of the rules-based engine is all about where artificial intelligence is throwing results. And what is that which is required as part of achieving this whole, what we say, complex system? It's all about data, algorithms, and infrastructure. But as we say that eventually, AI is not just in terms of looking at business impact. Today, we are facing a challenge from a relevancy and average age of an S&P 500 company 20 years back was close to about 35 years. Today, it's reduced to 12 years. And we've all seen in the top rungs of the S&P 500 companies, predominantly we are talking about technology companies. And the bedrock of these technology companies is nothing but set of algorithms which are monetizing the whole engines of those companies in terms of the dollars coming in. But there is one aspect which, to my own vantage point, I always believe that just implementing an aggregation of data, infrastructure, technology may not be enough, because eventually we are trying to mimic the human brain in terms of reaping those benefits of artificial intelligence. And somewhere those adjacent competencies around behavioral science, design thinking is coming to the fore. And the reason organizations today in the artificial intelligence and AI are trying to mesh design thinking and behavioral science, because eventually all of us in our present current mode of the competition or the VUCA world are talking about transformation, disruption, and innovation. And this cannot be accomplished unless there is that usability and functionality which can be built by leveraging artificial intelligence with behavioral science and design thinking. Now, that goes back to the point when it comes to India. Now, I'm sure many of you have been reading newspapers about what India is trying to do on the policy making. There is already a policy which has been curated, released by Niti Aayog. There is one which is under work by METI, which is the Ministry of Information and Technology. And there is one which is also being worked upon from PM's office. So many of you may not be aware that our Prime Minister is consulting 3 artificial intelligence experts from US, and no one knows the name. But such is the whole significance of all these things which are happening, that we can't just disregard all this momentum which is there in terms of leveraging this whole technology called artificial intelligence. Now, let me start with this whole understanding of what does it take for us as a nation to attain a premier position in artificial intelligence. And some of these points or the data points are absolutely stunning for us to say, look, the foundational capabilities and the aspects are already there. All what we have to do is to capitalize on that. One is the whole maturity. We all understand today we have a leadership position in technology, close to about $160 billion worth of export revenues, with close to about 1,500 GICs contributing to almost 0.5% of our GDP just coming from GIC export revenues. The second, our workforce. 2.6 million STEM population. Now that's a different thing, what we're talking about, almost 80% of them not getting deployed. The third aspect is about the investment. How the government is trying to look in terms of opening that private-public partnership. Impact in terms of how the most disparate sectors in India, healthcare, banking, insurance, are going through that whole change because of artificial intelligence. And the last is our diversity. Somewhere, it's coming to our advantage because the data sets which will get produced and generated with this mass population in terms of the consumption will throw a lot of good results when we start implementing those algorithms. But this is what we say that eventually, if we have to really look in terms of attaining a premium position, some convergence of creating this ecosystem has to come together. An ecosystem where we're talking about leveraging startups, where we're talking about leveraging academia, where we are talking about leveraging how do we build those financial muscle in terms of investment banks, VCs, PE, hedge funds, investing in artificial intelligence, and not to take away the corporates, the existing corporates, how do they morph themselves into this whole new technology bandwagon? Because at the end of the day, any one aspect missing from here will actually make us miss the bus when it comes to attaining the premier position. And let me, in the next subsequent slide, drill down in terms of saying how these all things are crucial for us in terms of attaining a premier position in AI. So this is what, as part of the overall understanding which I have from my own vantage point, participating in some of these meetings at the levels what's happening today from the government or academia or from the corporate, there are three broad steps which are being proposed as part of India taking a pole position in AI. One, the whole aspect of going into this whole new series of education and evangelization. The second, the enablement piece in terms of building that ecosystem. Last, most often neglected, but we've seen how this whole kind of, let's say, missing the ethics side can put a kind of a havoc in the system, is very, very important for us to look into that. So when it comes to the whole aspect of education, look, we have a challenge today. We all understand today that PhDs are frowned in some manner, because for us, if we really have to leverage PhDs, we really need to open up a system where PhDs are encouraged, incentivized, and promoted in a way which is best for the corporates and organization. Just to give a kind of a number, China, kind of on any given, I would say, year, produces close to about 42,000 PhD. We do just 10% of that, which is equivalent in terms of what we are saying that the research papers which needs to be generated to propagate this whole AI system or the AI prowess is missing. And that's where one of the aspects is that can academia and corporate come together? And we know that there is always a gap that academia and corporate don't talk to each other very often. I think this is the time inflection point where that gap needs to be mitigated to create not just a very conducive environment for the research, but also look at the topicalness of our education system. We are at a cusp today, and it's a very concerning cusp, that our skill sets which are being there in the current technology population, just to give you a number, today Indian IT population is close to about 4 million professionals. If you take out the professionals which are 500,000 in the emerging exponential technologies and some almost 800,000 professionals in the GIC, you're left with broadly 2.5 million professionals which are dated on their skill sets and competencies. Now, 2.5 million is a huge size, and whatever government organizations do, it will not be sufficient in terms of reskilling and upskilling. Second aspect is that from an educational point of view, can artificial intelligence be embedded in the course curriculum of our universities, colleges, and schools? China has already started doing it. Right from their level 9 and 10 grades, they have not only electives as AI, but a standard mandatory course on the AI. And I think that's where our education academic system needs an overhaul, which is not a sum total of the responsibility just by the academic institution. I think the corporates will have to come together. The whole set of partners in terms of training will have to come together to change this system. And the second piece in terms of enablement is how does the whole ecosystem of us promoting AI startups, AI kind of, let's say, organization comes into the picture. Because today, it's a huge issue for us to provide that wherewithal for an AI company to survive and thrive. The lack of data sets, the lack of trust, our inertia to kind of share the data, our inertia in terms of saying maybe startups are not the right way to kind of build the AI prowess, is something limiting in terms of the whole holy grail for us to look at the larger ecosystem. Some movements have happened in terms of Hyderabad setting up the T-Hub, a very thriving, very kind of, let's say, momentum-led kind of a startup ecosystem. Wisec in India is opening up on the fintech valley. So there are some seeding kind of examples which we have today, but I think we'll have to take it this aspect on a nationwide basis. This is no-brainer today. I think enough has been said about this, I'm sure, in the last 2 days on the whole data governance, data quality, ethics side, that eventually this may lead us to what we say the downslide of the industry if this is not kind of implemented. And I think the onus is not on the government, the onus is on the practitioner. Anyone thinking to be an aspiring analytics AI professional or already in this kind of a practice on an area really needs to think that harvesting the data for a wrong flip side purpose is a no-no. One challenge, one kind of an issue or a case or an incident can actually mar the prospect of this entire industry. And I think that's where the government is also trying to come out with all the norms, what they could, but eventually the onus falls on us. Now, if we look at this whole aspect in terms of ethics, educate, and kind of enable, this leads to the whole understanding of the scenario that there has to be an urgency built into the system. And the reason I'm saying with a very vocal set of voice, urgency, because it's a slugfest. Nations which needs to kind of really showcase the prowess and AI have already taken the pole position. Look at this, and this is phenomenal because all of this is on stated public domains. China wants to be an AI leader by 2030, period. They have all steps, interventions, policy, what it takes now for them to implement. A country like South Korea has announced $840 million worth of investment just on AI. You saw the initial video clip where the Prime Minister, the good-looking Prime Minister of Canada, promoting AI. And by the way, I've never seen such a simple and understandable definition of AI, what he actually said, which gets to kind of really showcase to us that, look, at some level, they're all talking serious aspect about a technology called AI, which will not only change the whole rhythm for us, but for the nation overall. Now, let's come back to the whole aspect specifically to our own nation, India. Now, for many of you, many of these interventions, what you will see, and there are 6 of them in the different sectors, some of them are in works, some of them have been proposed, and some of them we've already reaped benefit in terms of how artificial intelligence got seeped in or got embedded in those interventions and made an impact. Let me start with the first one, agriculture. I think this is where one aspect of intervention in AI we cannot ignore is this particular sector. I mean, some of you may not be aware that today, IIT Chennai has mapped all the soil density data, all the crop yields, all the district kind of, let's say, data in terms of what agriculture crops they are producing or generating from last 25 years. That's a data set which is already there, where the government today is trying to kind of really unearth, can they come out now working on those data sets to start predicting the crop behavior, what kind of a crop variety, and what kind of agriculture yield India will have 10, 15, 20 years from now. Many of us are already aware there is a Kisan Center helpline, but many of you may not be aware that this helpline is actually now being operated in 36 different languages by a chatbot or a series of chatbots. So I think there are enough AI interventions which is coming to the rescue of agrarian, I would say, sector, but I think there is a lot of that work which needs to happen. And Japan, by the way, is a premier nation in terms of implementing the whole AI interventions in agriculture for the larger good. And what has happened in the last 10 years, because of that, their GDP impact, because of using AI in agriculture, has gone up by 2%. And that's a sum total of a huge impact we are talking about for a country like Japan. Imagine what can happen if this gets implemented in the whole 9 yards for a country like us. Smart cities. I think we are all today talking about how the whole transport, how the whole kind of traffic jams are an issue or a concern. And I think artificial intelligence can not only look at the whole traffic density, measuring the kind of, let's say, data in terms of how those route optimizations or the traffic can be controlled, but there is also a way in terms of looking at how the predictive asset maintenance of the various features in terms of road infrastructure can be contained and mitigated by using artificial intelligence. Now, smart cities, by the way, is a concept which is not new. But what's happening out here is many of the governments, or rather the state governments in India, are trying to work on their own in terms of creating a template. Like Jaipur, recently they are doing a kind of a IoT summit where smart city is one of the larger charters in terms of implementation. But what is unique about these state governments is that not only they are building the template, they are enabling other state governments to kind of work on the same template, same kind of, let's say, whole aspect of algorithms, but with different data sets. So what has worked in Jaipur is now being replicated in Raipur, and then the whole aspect of other kind of, let's say, states and their kind of capitals are leveraging this whole aspect of artificial intelligence in the smart cities. Now, skills. I mean, enough I have said about this thing. I think this is one area which needs a lot of intervention, and many of you may be aware that there is a sector skill council which is institutionalized by NASSCOM, where there is a mammoth effort to train and reskill 2 million workforce in India, 2 million. And Prime Minister Modi himself is kind of looking into the whole aspect of how this whole ITI sector, because today there is a huge population which is working on re-enhancing their skills and vocations through ITI. Then there is a corporate sector which is looking at all the emerging exponential technologies and taking out those aspects where we have dealt with the dated and archaic technologies. So there is a massive effort which is happening out here, and I think the results in the next 2 or 3 years will really determine where are we stacked in terms of this. The other aspect which is crucial and cannot be ignored, and all of us are privy to this, many of us pay a Swachh Bharat cess and a tax. And to some level, this is also in a way to monitor what's going in terms of leveraging this money which is getting deducted from our salaries. But this is one use case which has got a very, very good example of how artificial intelligence is being leveraged on the Swachh Bharat campaign. So what it does is that if you all know that the government has taken initiative to spend close to about $3 billion in next 5 years to create in the nook and corner a sanitation workplace in 600,000 villages. Now, for every aspect of a construction, there is an equally different aspect if the construction quality is good, if actually those sanitation workplaces have been created. So there is a helpline today, and if you go to one of this sanitation workplace and you're not fine with the quality and hygiene of that sanitation workplace, you can click a picture and send that picture through a WhatsApp. Nothing kind of a unique on that, you can send that picture. But what that control center is doing is taking that picture and through the satellite imagery data is trying to correlate that picture that where exactly is this sanitation place, which is fine. Once they locate, what they do immediately, a message is sent to the concerned contractor of that sanitation place with that image matching the specification that what is wrong with the quality, what you've not been able to attain. And then the same feedback goes to that contractor in flat 10 minutes, where the contractor has to attend to that particular sanitation workplace in next 24 hours. That's the level of what we say data usage. Artificial intelligence using the whole imagery is coming to the rescue in terms of this particular campaign. And when I say this whole aspect of healthcare, I think this is one of our missing leg in our, what we say, prosperity of India, that patients today get a raw deal. There are no records available for patients when they hop from one hospital to another. Now, many of you may be aware that there is an open stack of healthcare policy which has been released by Niti Aayog. What it does, and the first example of implementation they are taking in Andhra Pradesh, is they're opening up the data and the records of government hospitals, which will enable patients to go, register one time, and immediately their past ailments, symptoms, and the medical records will start getting in front of those doctors which do not have that historical viewpoints. Look at the whole change in terms of the healthcare which will happen once this whole policy comes into the picture. And this is akin to the many of the advanced nations, how they're trying to do, where healthcare is not a one per se exercise or a one per se visit. It's a sum total of your historical elements put together for the well-being for the patient. And looking at this aspect, I have a worry on one piece which is not still being tuned to the technology and more specific to artificial intelligence, and that's the judicial system. While in the next, or rather last, a month or so, 2 large verdicts have happened, and a lot of us are rejoicing in terms of this, but the fact still goes, which limits our system, the judicial system, that there are 30 million pending cases in India, and 84% of those 30 million cases have a tenure of more than 12 years. It's a simple test bed for artificial intelligence to go, sift through the data, use those kind of natural language processing search engine tools, and come out with the right set of aid for the lawyers to take a decision. Now, the lawyers may contest that, look, what will we do if artificial intelligence does all those things? But let's give a whole kind of, let's say, benefit of doubt to the lawyers that they're meant not to go through the sections of the law, they're meant to resolve the cases. And that's the same case for the medicine or the healthcare field, that the doctors are not supposed to analyze the x-rays or the MRIs. They are supposed to counsel patients for their well-being. And I think that's the level of change in terms of the skills which will happen in India and elsewhere in other countries in next few years, that automation will not displace jobs. Automation will replace the daily chores and the task. And that's where there'll be a rejigging in terms of how we look at the jobs today, skills today, and the competencies today. And sum total of this, if we look in terms of aggregating the viewpoints, what I mentioned, one, that what India is standing today, or rather where India is standing today in terms of taking that pole position, we have the population, we have the technology on our side, we also have a massive investment which is going in terms of reskilling. We also have a very diverse and a very loaded skill set population, the STEM population. What is missing, I think, is a sum total of direction we need to kind of take in terms of aggregating these viewpoints, not through the policies. Eventually, the governments will be responsible for releasing and publishing the policies, but at some level, as practitioners, as aspiring professionals, we got to take some of those mandates to the best of our wisdom and say, look, outside of the work I'm doing as part of solving the business problem for the organization, maybe a marketing mix modeling, maybe a kind of a customer acquisition model, can I start also looking at solving some, if not a large, a minute problem for India? And I think there are enough interventions available for all of us, which gives a credence to the fact that eventually artificial intelligence is for the good. Enough has been said about the flip side of artificial intelligence, that look, it will prove out to be a nemesis for the mankind, singularity will prevail, and many of us who have seen the Blade Runner 2014 will also say that, look, yeah, eventually humanoids will take over. But the fact we've all seen over the last 100 years of the evolution, when it comes to the fourth technology revolution, while it's very, very mind-boggling in terms of the changes which are happening through artificial intelligence, but humanity have always risen more upwards when they have been challenged by technology. That's one. Second, humanoids, cyborgs, cannot replace the empathy, love, and the expressions and emotions what we have. I think the moment one can see that, I'll be glad to change my view, but that's not happening, kind of a thing. Last but not the least, I think it's important to understand that while I maintain my apolitical view in terms of what's happening of the various policy initiatives to make and propel our country to the vantage point of AI, let's not forget, it's a race against time, because if you are not leveraging this whole aspect of interventions, and I just narrated about 6 interventions, there are multiple dime a dozen interventions what India can do as a nation to leapfrog in terms of being proclaimed as an AI destination. I think onus is on us, and if you take this particular note with this particular video.